2:47 in the morning, in a water park that's been dry since 2002, I heard something go down the green slide above me. Not rain, not an animal. Water, or something close enough to it that my body reacted before I had a chance to think. I checked the disconnection paperwork twice before that shift. The utility disconnect, the survey packet, the pump decommission date. I was not guessing. The park had no municipal connection, no pressure, no source. So when the sound came, I stood at the base of the green slide with my streamlight in my hand, and I did not raise it. I stood there until the sound reached the bottom of the slide and stopped on its own. My name is Marcus. I was working for Allied Perimeter Services out of Fontana, contract security, sites in legal limbo, places waiting to be demolished or sold, or both. The job was simple. Show up, walk the route, check the fencing, fill the paper report, radio in your rounds, go home. The pay is not enough to make you brave, and the probation structure is not something you argue with when your lease is 4 months from renewal. Site 7B was the former Wild Waters Adventure Park, about 38 acres off the east side of San Bernardino. In daylight, it looked abandoned mid-thought. At night, it looked worse, like the city had drained it fast and decided not to go back. Empty wave pool, drained basins, slide towers with the paint peeling off in long strips, dead palm stumps, Q shelters with the shade fabric rotted to gray rags that moved in the wind. The basins held cold the way they used to hold water. Every time I passed one, I felt the temperature drop around my knees. The park felt oversized at night. Too much concrete bowl, too much open rail, too much empty air where people used to be loud. Basins the size of parking lots. Slide structures taller than my apartment building. Paths that went for hundreds of feet with nothing either side but dead ground and chain link. I got assigned Site 7B in early March. Probationary site. 90 days, clean reports, then better pay, and a real indoor guard station. My shift was 2100 to 0530. I drove from my apartment in Rialto, checked in at the Eastgate Shack, a plywood box with a folding chair, a clip light, and a 3-ring binder holding the site map, the route sheet, and blank report forms. Signed the log. Started my rounds. Allied wanted the reports in 24-hour time, and after a week on site, I started thinking that way even when I wasn't writing. 2 full circuits per shift, counterclockwise. East gate, north, along the perimeter fence. Across the back lot past the maintenance buildings. West, along the upper boundary where you could hear the freeway through the chain link. Then south, past the slide tower complex. 4 big fiberglass structures, walkways, stairs up about 50 feet. From there, the route dropped toward the main pool overlook. Kidney-shaped basin, maybe 160 feet long, 40 feet deep at center. Completely empty. Past the main pool, the route curved east on the maintenance road, past the wave pool, past the splash pad, back to the gate. 55 minutes for a full circuit at a steady pace. My supervisor, Kendricks, told me once I was the only contractor who actually used the damage log. He said it like he hadn't decided yet what to make of it. I didn't push. The first 3 nights were quiet, which at Site 7B meant a specific kind of noise. Freeway wash from the 210 and 215, wind off the mountains hitting the valley with a low, steady push that made the chain link hum its full length. Coyotes far off, plains out of Ontario. And underneath all of that, my footsteps coming back off the concrete with a half-second delay, my radio squelch bouncing off the slide towers, the basins shaping every sound and giving it edges it shouldn't have. I noticed small things. The mineral staining inside the drain basins was uneven, heavier on the north-facing walls, like water had pooled there more recently than 22 years ago. Some of the fiberglass slide channels had a faint residue that wasn't dust. It looked like the film water leaves when it evaporates off a hard surface. I noted it in my report. Nobody responded. On night 2, around 1:15 in the morning, I heard something in the green slides channel. Friction. Weight shifting on dry fiberglass. I stopped and aimed my streamlight into the discharge opening at the base and held it for 10 seconds. Nothing. Just the tube curving up out of sight. That chalky mineral surface, cleaner than anything else in the park. I wrote it up as possible animal activity and moved on. I didn't know I had just broken a rule that wasn't in my binder yet. On night 3, I stood between the slide complex and the main pool for 4.5 minutes, recounting damage markers on a retaining wall. Found the missing 9th one, face down in the dust, restuck it, noted the repair. 4.5 minutes in one spot. I thought nothing of it at the time. Night 4 changed things. I opened the binder at the start of my shift, and a folded piece of paper fell out from behind the front cover. Standard letter size, folded in thirds. Heavier stock than printer paper. Slightly water-warped at the bottom edge. Ink fully legible. Across the top in a font that looked like late 90s inkjet. Site 7B. Night Protocol Addendum. No date. No author. No allied perimeter letterhead. No signature. Just the heading, a line, and 9 numbered items. I read it standing in the guard shack with the clip light on. By the time I finished, the back of my neck was cold in a way that had nothing to do with the March air. Rule 1. Complete each circuit counterclockwise. Do not reverse your route direction for any reason. If you believe you missed a section, continue forward and check it on the next circuit. Rule 2. If you hear water in any pipe, drain, or slide channel, do not go looking for where it's headed. Note the time on your report, write pressure event, and keep walking. Rule 3. If any locked building on Site 7B sounds occupied after 0100, do not answer it through the door. Do not check the light. Rule 4. If your flashlight beam reflects off a wet surface inside any drained basin, turn the beam away within 3 seconds. Do not re-examine the surface. Rule 5. Between the slide towers and the main pool overlook, do not stop long enough to start studying what you hear. 90 seconds is already too long. Rule 6. If a slide makes a sound like something is inside it, do not light the opening. Pass it and keep your pace. Rule 7. Between 0200 and 400, stay on the paved maintenance road. Do not step onto decking basin edges or bare ground beside any former water feature. Rule 8. If there's a shape in the main pool before dawn, treat it like bait. Do not go to the lip. Do not call it a person on the radio. Do not climb down. Log it as visual distortion, main basin, and continue at normal pace. Rule 9. If your report names more than one pressure event, make a clean copy with only the first one left on it. The real report goes in the envelope in your glove box. Do not open the envelope. Deliver it to the Allied perimeter drop box within 24 hours. I read it twice. Then I sat down and read it a third time. I had already broken 2 of these rules. On night 2, I had aimed my flashlight into the green slide opening and held it there for 10 seconds. Rule 6 says don't light the opening. On night 3, I had stood between the slide complex and the main pool for 4.5 minutes. Rule 5 says 90 seconds is already too long. I'd been there for 3 times that, and I had followed 3 of them without knowing they existed. I'd always gone counterclockwise because the route map showed it that way. The pump house on night 2 was padlocked. I'd never tried entering it after 0100. I'd stayed on pavement because the decking was uneven and I didn't want to roll an ankle in the dark. So either this memo matched real behavioral patterns my instincts had already found, or someone had been watching me closely enough to write rules that described my first 3 nights. I couldn't decide which one was worse. I tried to verify it. Looked for a date stamp, a printer code, a watermark. Nothing. The fold was sharp, creased once, left. The water stain at the bottom edge smelled faintly mineral. Not chlorine exactly, more like the memory of it. Calcium. Something alkaline and old. The inside front cover of the binder had a faint rectangular mark where the paper had been pressing against it. That mark looked like months, not days. I thought about calling dispatch, but I had no idea what I would say. I put the memo in my back pocket, picked up the clipboard, and started my round. Nothing happened on night 4's first circuit. I told myself it was a prank from the previous contractor, a guy named Ellison, who Kendricks mentioned only as didn't finish his contract, you're the replacement. I hadn't asked for more than that. I almost believed the prank theory, which was enough to get me through the round. I started my second circuit at 1:40 in the morning. Wind had picked up. That dry mountain pass push that makes the chain link vibrate its full length. Low 50s. I could see my breath in the flashlight beam. Halfway between gate 1 and the maintenance sheds, I heard the first pipe. A low groan, the kind old galvanized steel makes when water hits it for the first time in a while. Coming from below and to my left, where the underground supply line runs toward the slide tower complex. It came again, longer. I could hear the direction, south, from the pump station toward the slides, like water was being pushed through a system that hadn't carried anything in 22 years. March rains do strange things to runoff out there. That was one explanation. I wrote Rule 203, pressure event, and started walking, because Rule 2 didn't say stand there working it out. It said note the time and continue. By the time I reached the slide complex, the sound had moved into the fiberglass. That rushing, channeled resonance, the specific sound of a water park running. All the enclosed slides were producing it. The green one ran top to bottom and cut off. 3 seconds. Then the blue ones started. Top to bottom. Like something using them. In order. By then, I was letting a piece of paper tell me how to walk the park. I kept my beam on the pavement and kept moving. That was enough for night 4. Filed the report, drove home, windows down, let the cold air do what it could. Nights 5 and 6 were quiet, and I let that calm me down more than it should have. Night 7 started normally. Clear, light wind, about 54 degrees. I started my second circuit just before 1 o'clock in the morning. At 1:47, on the north fence line, I heard all the pipes. Everyone. The supply line, the return lines, the laterals to the slide towers, the feed lines to the wave pool, the whole buried system pressurizing at once. I could trace each sound to a specific pipe run because I'd walked over them for 7 nights. I wrote 0147 pressure event and stopped there, because if I stood working it out, I was already doing what the rule was warning me about. I started walking. Counterclockwise. Normal pace. The sound built as I moved south. By the time I reached the slides, every structure was running. All 4 main towers and 2 of the smaller east cluster slides, all producing that channeled water park resonance at once. It sounded the way the park must have sounded in 1988, with the pumps on, and 2,000 people in line on a hot San Bernardino afternoon. Except it was just past 2 on a Tuesday in March, and I was the only person on 38 acres. I kept my beam down, eyes on the pavement. The sound was above me in the channels, below me in the pipes, in the feed lines between them. I could feel it in my back teeth, the way you feel a subwoofer through a floor. Then the green slide cut off. Not fading, gone, like a valve closing. And in the space it left, I heard something else. Not water. Individual impacts on fiberglass. Separate and spaced. Like something working its way down the inside of the tube, bracing against the walls, moving in stages. I kept walking. The blue slide was still going. Then the red open channel slide on the far tower started. Just a trough, no enclosure. I caught something I hadn't meant to see, not by looking up, by catching a reflection in the wet strip on my own flashlight barrel. Something dark reached the lip of the red channel and stopped there, like it was deciding whether to drop. When I flinched, the beam moved, and when the beam moved, it was gone. 3 fresh spots on the pavement by my boot, round and clear, already going dusty at the edges before I even finished registering them. I kept walking through the Rule 5 zone, counting seconds in my head. Did not stop. Did not count damage markers. The main pool fell away on my left. 40 feet deep, 160 feet long, and at night you could aim your flashlight into it and still feel like you'd missed most of it. The beam finds the bottom. It just doesn't feel like it holds anything down there. I kept my beam on the road. I was almost past. Then the pipe sound went. All of it, at once. Slides first, then the laterals, then the supply lines, then the circulation mains under the basin floor. Last of all, and when those stopped, the silence was the kind where you can hear your own jacket moving against the clipboard. I should have kept walking. From the basin, a sound like wet fabric dragging across dry concrete. Slow. Stopping. Starting again. Something moving along the pool floor. And a smell with it. Mineral, alkaline, chalky. The inside of old pipe that hasn't carried water in 20 years and has no business smelling like it just did. My flashlight was in my right hand, aimed at the road. 6 inches up, 30 degrees left. The problem was I couldn't prove it wasn't a person. I knew what the rule said. I raised the light anyway. The beam dropped 40 feet and lit up the bottom. Wet concrete. Not all of it, but in a path. 2 feet wide, running from the deep end drain grate toward the near wall in a slow curve, the way something makes when it drags itself. The wet surface caught the beam the way thin water on concrete does. Not a mirror, just a sheen. 1. The trail ended about 15 feet from the near wall. At the end of it, on dry concrete, there was a shape, the size of a person. On its side, or partly on its side, in the kind of position that could have been a fall, or a curl, or a collapse. Dark. Wet. The sheen extended around it the same way it extended along the trail. 2. 3. I turned the beam away. They wanted it logged as visual distortion, main basin. Not person, not body, not injured. But if that was a real person and I walked away because of a sheet of paper, then I was part of whatever happened next. That was around when I understood what had probably happened to Ellison. Kendricks never said, and I never asked. Standing at that pool in the dark, I didn't need the rest explained. I looked at my watch. 2:14. Well past 90 seconds. Standing in the zone the rules told me not to linger in. Staring at the basin they told me not to approach. I pulled my radio. Channel 4. Dispatch, this is Site 7B. How copy? Gloria came back clean. 7B. Dispatch copies. Go ahead. Rule 8 said no emergency language. It didn't say no radio. There was a gap in the wording, so I used it. I couldn't do nothing and I couldn't do everything. Dispatch 7B reporting a visual anomaly. Main pool area, debris or displaced material in the main basin. Visual only. Will note in my report. Copy 7B, log it and carry on. Radio back on my belt, my grip hand was wet. In my head, I wrote possible injured party, then scratched it out, then picked up my pen and actually wrote it at the top of the real report form, looked at it for maybe 4 seconds and crossed it out hard before I could argue myself back around. That was me deciding. I stood there and listened. From the pool, nothing. No movement. No voice. The basin is 40 feet deep. Not a mile. Sound carries in concrete. If a conscious person was down there, they would have heard me on the radio. They would have yelled. The fact that they didn't. I've turned that over every day since, and I still don't have a clean answer for it. I turned away from the pool, counterclockwise, normal pace. I logged the pressure event at 147. I marked the basin sighting at 0208. That was when I raised the light. By the time I used the radio, it was 0214. Made a clean copy with only the pressure event on it. Put the original in the envelope, in my glove box, and sealed it. 2.5 hours left on shift. Structure checks, pavement only. Around 3:45, the pipe sound came back. Softer, more like draining than filling. I noted the time in my head and didn't write it down. Then, one final structure check loop on the sheet, which meant passing the main pool again whether I wanted to or not. Park back to its baseline noise. Freeway. Wind. Chain link hum. North fence. West boundary. Past the maintenance sheds. At the old pump room, by the north corner, one hard knock from the other side of the locked steel door. Then a sound like a faucet being turned on inside a building with no water supply. I kept walking. I wasn't about to touch that door. Slide tower complex a few minutes later. Silent. Fiberglass, rust, wind. Passed without stopping. Main pool came into view. Flashlight on the road. I did not look left, covered the whole south edge. 160 feet of concrete lip. 6 feet to my left. 40 feet of empty air past that. And did not look once. But I listened. At the midpoint, above the deep end, I heard something I've spent 30 days trying to describe. From inside the bowl, not the pipes, not the slides. An exhalation. Long, slow, the way a person breathes out when they've been holding it. It sounded relieved, like I'd done what it wanted. I kept walking because the rule had been right about everything else, and I had nothing better to trust. Finished the loop. Back to the shack. Filled out my reports. Drove home with the windows down. The mountains were going gray at the edges, and the valley already smelled like the heat coming in early. I thought about pulling over and sitting for a while. I didn't, because I was afraid if I stopped moving, I'd turn back. I worked 11 more nights at Site 7B. Some quiet, some with pressure events. I followed the rules, never looked into the main pool again, walked past it twice a night, flashlight on the road. Some nights I heard the wet sound, the movement, the way the air at the lip shifted. Twice more, I heard the exhalation. Once it sounded close to a word. I did not slow down. I did not document it. I never got comfortable with it. I just got better at keeping my eyes on the road. On night 21, the park was completely silent. No pressure events, no pipe sound, nothing. I did my rounds, filed a clean report, signed out. I thought I should feel relieved. I felt hollowed out, like something had been waiting for me to finish. And once I did, it had no more use for me. For 30 days, I worked other sites. Colton, Redlands, normal shifts in normal places. No basins, no mineral smell. I put the memo in my kitchen drawer under takeout menus and dead batteries and tried to let it sit there until it stopped meaning anything. I almost got there. Then, the letter came. Standard Allied perimeter envelope, addressed to my apartment. Renewal for Site 7B. Another 90 days. Better pay. Same hours, same route. Signed by Kendricks. Clipped behind the signature page was a fresh copy of the memo. Clean paper, no water stain, same 9 rules. But this one had a date stamp in the bottom right corner, the date of my first shift, and it was on Allied perimeter letterhead, as if the first copy had only looked unofficial because somebody wanted me to think it was. The paper clip had a faint mineral ring on it, the kind calcium leaves on metal when water dries and doesn't come back. I looked at it for a long time. Rule 2 was highlighted in yellow, precise, done with a ruler, just the text. In the margin, in handwriting I didn't recognize, not Kendrick's, not Gloria's, not mine, 5 words. Good. You chose correctly. The note wasn't about safety. It was approval. I signed the renewal anyway. Friday night I'll start at the west gate, walk counterclockwise and keep my light on the road when I pass the pool.